G'day, I'm Ben and this video is all about 1KZ swapping an RJ70 or LJ70 Bundera. So I first 1KZ swapped my LJ70 about 16 years ago when I was living back in the UK, and then about 8 years ago I 1KZ swapped my LJ78 when I was living up in Queensland. I've since done 3 LN106 Hiluxes and converted all of those to 1KZ. And the change it makes, the improvement it makes is absolutely amazing. There's so much torque, so much power, so much balls. It's so much better than the sluggish L engine or the R engine, the 22R. So it makes such a difference. It's really worth doing. It just completely transforms the vehicles. So I absolutely love the 1KZ. It's a magnificent engine. I've got it in 3 of my cars. My good friend Hugh recently asked me if I could help him with his swap in his Bundera, his RJ70 Bundera, and I was only too happy to help him with that conversion. So what you're about to see is the video of that conversion and all the challenges and things we faced with the conversion. So hopefully it will help you. If you're thinking of doing the swap yourself, or you are doing the swap yourself, hopefully it'll help you and answer a few questions and give you a few ideas and tips and tricks. And if you are doing the conversion and you want to buy some adapter plates, I actually sell adapter plates that allow the 1KZ engine to bolt straight in, so no cutting or welding to the chassis, the engine just bolts straight in, so that makes it much quicker and easier, and much easier to get it engineered because you're not altering the chassis in any way. So yeah, just hit me up with a message or a comment if you want some of those, and good luck with your conversion if that's what you're doing, and enjoy the video. One engine donor, 1KZ powered Hilux. So this is the cheapest way of doing an engine swap. Buy a complete car like this, you pull the engine out, you sell all the bits off that you don't need, make your money back, make some profit, and end up with a free engine. It's a tried and tested method. It works really well. So anyway, we'll crack on now and we'll get this all pulled apart. So tray off. Next job is to get the cab off. Once we've got the cab off, we can pull the engine and gearbox and axles and everything out and suspension really easily without a body on. So body off next, and then we can strip all those mechanicals. So after 2 hours, we've got a big pile of parts and a car that is stripped down to the point where we're going to be able to lift the cab off the chassis. So we'll use the hoist to lift the cab off, and then we'll roll the chassis out from underneath it. And then once we've got that out, we can then strip all the good bits off the chassis. Long range fuel tank, diffs, suspension, gearbox, transfer box, engine, all the mechanical stuff can then be stripped off. So hopefully another couple of hours and this will all be stripped and wrecked, and yeah, the car will be dismantled. Okay, we've got the body off and in the trailer. I chopped the front off to make it fit. So we're now ready to strip the chassis.
Just give it a blow first.
Engine out, gearbox out, suspension and fuel tank still to go.
What do you want?
So all loaded up now. We've got the nice new engine there for the conversion, the gearbox for selling, the tray and all the tools and stuff, and we've got all the panels and other parts on here. So we'll head back now and get all this unloaded, and then you can get it all cleaned and sold, and yeah, we're one step closer to getting the engine in the Bundera. High pressure steam, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
So we've been busy working away on the 1KZ engine. We've done the timing belt, and the tensioners and all that sort of stuff. We fitted a Cray mechanical pump from New Zealand, new oil filter, new engine mounts. We've reused the old clutch, but we've put a new genuine rear main seal in, and a few hoses and bits and pieces we've put on. So it's almost ready now to go in the car. We fitted a hose here going to the turbo wastegate, and that will ultimately be going to a boost T once we've got the engine in the car. And over here we've got the old intake, part of the intake manifold, so we want to remove that butterfly in the center and remove all these electronic bits on the outside, because obviously this car will now have this engine will now have a mechanical fuel pump, so we don't need any of that junk on there. So we're going to strip that off, and then that can go back on here, and we can get the crossover pipe on, and then this engine is pretty much ready to go in the car. So I removed all these bits from the intake manifold and then welded up the holes that were left on the sides. So not completely necessary, but I just think it makes for a much nicer, neater conversion. And yeah, I like to get rid of all that junk. It's not needed, so yeah, off it comes, and the holes get welded up. But like I said, not absolutely critical for this conversion. Okay, we've got the 1KZ engine bolted up to the R150 gearbox, and that is now almost ready to go into the car. So there's a couple of little things I wanted to show you. When you're doing this conversion, it's a real good time when the gearbox is out to put some fittings in for breathers. So the gearbox and the transfer box have got raised breathers, raised air intakes, so that they're not going to suck water in if you do a water crossing. So we've got those on there. We had to drill and tap those out and put those fittings on. And the other thing I wanted to show you was the studs on these intake manifolds. Now, it's really common for people not to have the right tools to bolt these on. So people don't use the right tool to grip the end. You actually need one of these sockets. And these sockets are the actual right tool for these studs. So it's really important to use one of these, to use that socket to grip the stud. That way you can actually bolt that first section down onto the manifold using one of those special sockets. So we've actually had to replace two of these studs because these two, someone had destroyed the ends. They'd gripped them with vice grips, and they'd really rounded them and chewed them up and made a huge mess. So these are actually brand new ones, these ones. And the other thing that someone has done is they've actually damaged the thread in the intake manifold here. So there's no thread in that one left. So we're actually going to drill that out and put a helicoil in it to repair that thread. So that's our first job in the morning, is to drill that, put a helicoil in it, and then we can bolt that manifold and crossover pipe on. We're going to drain the engine oil and gearbox oil overnight tonight. So in the morning we'll put those drain plugs back in and fill it up with fresh oil. Do the helicoil and the crossover pipe, and then that is completely ready then to go into the car. So very, very excited to be getting that in. It's going to really transform that vehicle. That engine is going to give it so much more torque and power than the old 22R. Finally ready to bring in the RJ70 and pull its old engine and gearbox out and fit our nice shiny new one. So a very exciting moment. Okay, so we've got the RJ70 into the garage, and the first job is to remove the batteries, or at least disconnect them. So we're going to get those out of the way, and we're going to remove the bonnet, and that will give us much more clearance and room to swing the engine and gearbox in. And then we need to drain the radiator and disconnect all the heating hoses and remove the radiator and the hoses and all that, and then yeah, just keep disconnecting everything. Then disconnect the exhaust, the power steering, any heater hoses, vacuum hoses, anything like that. Obviously we're going from a petrol to a diesel, so we won't need the catch can, not the catch can, the charcoal canister anymore, so that can come out. So there's a little bit to do, but yeah, we'll crack on now, and hopefully another hour or two the engine will be ready to come out, and then the new one will be ready to go in. So we've got everything disconnected, and we've almost got the engine and gearbox out. So hopefully it will lift high enough that we can get it over the bull bar there. We're almost there, so it should be okay. So we'll get this one out, and then we're all ready then to put the new one in. Old 22R petrol engine, old G52 gearbox, and a nice empty engine bay ready for the 1KZ and the R150 box. So I just need to get them hooked up and lowered into position. Okay, so we're finally ready to bolt it into position, and we've just run this red hose for the breathers, for the gearbox and transfer box breather, and we've just left it long and coiled up for now, and afterwards we'll run that to where it's going. But yeah, happy that it's finally going in. So the adapter plates are in on the chassis. So yeah, we're all ready now to lift it in and bolt it in position, and then start connecting everything up. So the engine and gearbox are all now bolted in. So our mission now is to connect everything up. And there's loads and loads of stuff that needs connecting. So good day on it today. Hopefully we'll get lots done and get lots connected. Okay, so Hugh's just working underneath. All the electrical plugs on the gearbox and transfer box, they're all plugged straight in. And he's just connected the speedo cable, and that again just plugged straight in, so that's all good. I've just hooked up the power steering. So the standard hoses work absolutely perfectly. I haven't had to cut or bend or adjust any of the hoses. So that one there is the factory hose coming from the power steering box. So that's the high pressure hose going from the power steering pump to the power steering box. So that's all hooked up. That's the standard RJ70 one. And I've just hooked up this one, which is the return line from the reservoir. And again, that's just the standard hose and the standard bracket down there, if you can see. There was even a spot for that. There was even a spot for that standard bracket to bolt onto. So the old reservoir was up here somewhere, and yeah, the hose was long enough. Instead of going to that reservoir, it now comes across to that reservoir. So the power steering is now fully hooked up, ready to go. And I'm going to move on to the electrics next. I've got to do the starter motor, the alternator, and all the sensors. So one thing we do need to do is this vacuum pump on the front of the engine. We need to have a hose that goes from that all the way across to the back to the brake booster. And that gives pressure to that brake booster so that you've got decent brakes when you need to stop. So we did save this hose from the donor Hilux. So this connects on the engine and then runs all the way around and all the way across to the brake booster. And they have a one-way valve in them. That's what that white thing is. And that's designed so that it'll hold pressure. So even if the engine dies, you've still got a little bit of braking pressure for maybe 1 or 2 pumps before you lose that air-assisted, boost-assisted braking. So I'm going to try and fit that hose up now, and that'll be another thing connected. So I've just removed this. This is the charcoal canister. Obviously now we're going diesel, we don't need a charcoal canister. So I'm just making a bit of room in the engine bay here. So that was sitting there, so I've removed that. It's given me a bit more room, and I've just run these breather hoses and just tidied up this bit of engine bay, because obviously I've got stuff I need to run through here, hoses and electrics. I need to do the hose for the boost, the vacuum hose that's going to the brake booster I spoke about before. I need to do that, and I'm just hooking the coolant hoses up. So this hose here is the standard Hilux one. That one's worked absolutely perfectly. That's bolted up to the inlet coming out from the dashboard for the heater matrix, the heater inside the car. So that one's bolted up. This other one needs a little bit of pipe. It's got a straight joiner in it already, but it needs to connect to the bottom of the heater tap there. So it sort of needs a piece of hose that's going to go that way and connect back. So I'll do that next, and then get this this brake booster vacuum hose in. And that vacuum hose also needs to connect to the solenoids over there, and they're for the four-wheel drive system, so that you can press the button on the dashboard and it goes in and out of four-wheel drive high. So yeah, the brake booster the vacuum hose needs to go to the brake booster and to that. So I'll connect those in a minute, but I'm just going to do these two coolant hoses first. Okay, so for the hose that's going from that heater tap there onto that hose there coming off the engine, I'm going to use a piece of standard 5/8 heater hose. So just a standard piece of heater hose. But if I use that on its own, because that's such a tight bend coming around there, from there down, it will kink the hose. So what I'm going to use is one of these. And this is a stainless steel uni-coil. It's basically a spring, but what that allows you to do is you put that over the hose, and then when you bend the hose, this stops the hose from kinking. It stops the hose from going flat and kinking on the bend and stopping the flow of coolant. This works really well. So I'll get this fitted now and I'll show you how that looks. But that's a great way of overcoming issues like that, where you don't have a standard hose that's pre-formed, because all the standard hoses have got these bends in them pre-formed. They're not just a straight piece of pipe, otherwise they would kink. These are actually pre-formed with the bends. So yeah, to get around that, you can use standard hose and a uni-coil. So another really critical hose to hook up is the one that goes from there, the top of the fuel pump, to the inlet manifold. So the fuel pump puts more fuel in when the engine's under boost. So when the turbo kicks in, it needs more fuel, because obviously there's no point squeezing more air in without squeezing more fuel in. So this boost compensated pump needs to have boost pressure running to it. So it just has a vacuum hose on the top of the pump there. It runs to that inlet manifold there. So that will now put more fuel in when the engine's boosting up. When the turbo's spooling up and it's creating boost, the fuel pump will now put more fuel in. So that other one there, we'll cap it off for now, but if you eventually fits a boost gauge in his car, that'll be the perfect place to pick up the boost pressure for the gauge if he goes down that path. So for now, we'll just put a little cap on it and block it off. But yeah, it's there ready if he does decide to fit a boost gauge. So in my opinion, part of doing a neat conversion on a car like this is getting rid of all the unnecessary stuff that's no longer needed. So there's a pipe here, it comes all the way along the back of the firewall, the front of the firewall, and this went to the charcoal canister. So obviously now we don't have the charcoal canister, we no longer need this big piece of pipe going along there. That's not needed at all. And by removing that, it's then given me some threaded holes in the firewall there that I can then bolt pipes and other things to. So there's new things to go in, there's fuel lines, there's clutch lines, there's wiring, there's all sorts of stuff that's got to run along this firewall. And by removing that old pipe work, I've now got captive nuts, or captive nuts, threads all the way along the firewall that I can then bolt stuff to. And it'll also look much neater. So there's quite a bit of stuff in here that can be got rid of. This is the wiring that went to the alternator. So on the 22R, the alternator was down here, whereas on the new engine, it's on the other side. So that can all come out. I'm going to have to get rid of all that and solder and heat shrink in some new wires that will run to the other side of the car. And I can also get rid of this. I think that's the voltage regulator. The new alternator has a voltage regulator built in, so it doesn't need a separate regulator, so that can go. There's another little charcoal canister thingy down there. I think that's a charcoal canister, or something to do with emissions from the petrol engine, so that's something else that can go. So there's lots of bits that I can get rid of, and it will just make the engine bay look tidier. And if there's ever any issues in the future, it'll be easier to fault find without all this unnecessary clutter in here. It will be much neater and much easier to fault find and work on the car in the future. So yeah, I'm just cleaning up the engine bay, deleting stuff. Hugh's gone to get some hoses and some pipes so I can finish plumbing up the coolant and the vacuum there for the brake booster. So when he gets back with some hose, I can plumb all that in. But I just wanted to show you that, what I'm doing and why. So I'm just going through the wiring under this engine bay, and it is a real mess. Previous owners in the past have done some really dodgy work, and the way it is at the moment is not safe in my opinion. This vehicle could quite easily catch fire and burn down. I'll show you that briefly now and explain what I'm going to do to fix it. So there's wires coming off the battery terminal here, these two green ones, and they're meant to be fusible links. So someone's replaced the fusible links with just straight cable with no fuses. So they'll have to put a fuse in both of those wires, so that obviously if there's an electrical fault, it's not going to burn the car down. And the other thing that's not great is we've got this solenoid here that someone's put in for the dual battery system. It should have rubber boots on these terminals, because obviously they are live. And the bonnet hinge has been catching on the top of the solenoid there. You can see it's distorted it a bit. So yeah, it really needs a fuse in this system, in these wires going to the battery, and ideally that needs lowering or moving so that the bonnet hinge doesn't hit it. So the heater hoses are now all connected up to the heater tap, and you can see the unicoil that I used in there just to stop that hose from kinking. And we've got the vacuum hose linked up. It's going from the pump on the front all the way along there and then along the firewall. That will go to the brake booster and the four-wheel drive high system. So that's all done. And over this side, I'm just doing some more electrics. That's the vacuum line coming across, and it'll ultimately connect to the brake booster there. But we need to get a connector there that will reduce, that will go from big to big, and then also have a little one coming off it to connect the solenoids to. So there's solenoids there. They obviously have a tiny little hose on them. So what we need is we need a T-piece like this one, but bigger. So it'll have two big pieces coming through and then a little piece coming off. So we're waiting on that part. We don't have that today, so I've left that for now, and I'm just doing some electrics. And I'm just extending the oil pressure sensor wire to the other side of the engine, because previously it was on this side on the old 22R, and now it's on the other side. So this is how we do it. Cut the wires, twist them together, then they can be soldered, and then that heat shrink slid along and the heat shrink heated up. That'll be the perfect connection. So I've got to do that on lots of wires. There's the starter motor trigger wire, oil pressure, coolant, temperature sensor, and then there's all the alternator wires as well to bring across. So it's going to be quite a few wires to extend like that, and they'll all be done like that, soldered and heat shrunk. That is a perfect soldered joint, and that technique of twisting the wires and soldering them is the only technique that NASA approved for use on the International Space Station. So NASA approved wire splicing. So we're just draining the petrol, the last of the petrol out of the fuel tank, because obviously we'll be filling it with diesel now that this car's now going to be running on diesel. So there's only a tiny little drop in there, but at least that's another job done. I've been busy working away under the in the engine bay. I've made a custom mount for the diesel fuel filter, and I've fitted that. So the fuel filter now is in, and you can see that hose now goes down to our new mechanical pump. So I just made a bracket out of some 10mm thick aluminium that I had and mounted that up, and that's the original diesel fuel filter from the donor car, and that's got the pump on top so you can pump it and prime it if you ever lose prime. So the only thing that we still need to do is run some fuel lines from the tank to this end of the car, and there'll be one which will be the supply line there going to the filter, and then there'll be another one there coming off the pump, which is the return line. So any fuel the engine doesn't use, it then returns to the tank. So I need to run 2 lines from the fuel tank all the way up this end. And I'm just working away on the cable to the starter motor. So I've got this really big, thick, long cable, massive copper cable, and this was off the donor car as well. So that's going to take power from the battery here, from the positive terminal of the battery here, all the way down to the starter motor. That's permanently live, and obviously it draws a lot of amps, so it needs to be a really big cable. One of my top tips of the day with these cable ties, they're quite sharp afterwards. Now once you cut them off, and it's very easy to cut yourself on those when you're working in the engine bay. So what I like to do is, after I've done the cable ties up, is just rotate them around like that, so that that tail, that cut edge, is well out of the way and it's totally safe. Not only does it look a lot neater, but then it's a lot safer.